WWF SmackDown Just Bring It, released in 2001 for the then newly minted Sony PlayStation 2, was the first game in the SmackDown series to grace the new console as an exclusive for the platform.
WWF SmackDown! Just bring it!
Shut up, Cole. It's also the first taste of WWF action in the then brand spanking new 6th generation of consoles, followed by WWF Raw for Xbox and eventually WWE WrestleMania X8 for Nintendo GameCube, both released in 2002. And for anyone wondering what a new SmackDown would have looked like in this brave new PlayStation 2 world, well, they'd be in for a moderate disappointment, because despite the name, Just Bring It simply just didn't. That's not to say that there isn't an improvement in the jump from PS1 to PS2, because that'd be a flat-out lie. I mean, the wrestlers now have their actual entrances play out somewhat, as opposed to just walking in front of a Titantron in the PS1 games. And they look pretty good for an early PS2 title, matching the TV entrances or at least approximating them fairly well. Up to 8 wrestlers in the ring at the same time, which is a significant step up before it went back to 6 in subsequent games, but still, more wrestlers in the ring at once is a step in the right direction. And the graphics as a whole look a lot cleaner and smoother. There's more detail and definition on the character models with actual facial emotions and such. The few cutscenes that play out are fine, I guess, and the matches are... Hell in a Cell is still just a regular steel cage but with a ceiling on top, much like SmackDown 2 on PS1. And a lot of the animations are recycled from the PS1 games, looking even more awkward with these spiffy new character models. But no, in terms of the general presentation, Just Bring It is a notable step up at least. There's even commentary from Michael Cole and Taz, who were the SmackDown commentary team at the time, and they're awful. A bunch of random lines spewed out here and there, totally at random and without any life to it, while the most generic of generic rock tunes play in the background. Now fortunately, commentary in these games get a little better, but as far as this is concerned, the random lines blurted out by Vince McMahon in the WrestleMania arcade game from 1994 have more life put into it than the commentary featured here, and I realize that may not be a fair comparison because most of the commentary in these games are kind of lifeless anyways, but I digress. Really, the only thing that didn't see a huge jump is the gameplay, which is pretty much the same deal as the 2 SmackDown games on the PS1. Just Bring It is still a generally faster-paced game, with more of an emphasis on arcade action than any supposed basis in reality, where superstars will quickly recover from seemingly big moves, much like most modern sports entertainment these days, quite frankly, but again, I digress. And you're basically beating up your opponent with strikes and holds to build up this power meter until it fills to grant you a finisher that you could perform with the press of the L1 trigger whenever you're in the proper position to do so, which may or may not win you the match or get you closer to it. Sometimes it'll knock your opponent out, assuming you have the option on, but whatever. The only notable new thing that they added is that wrestlers now have 2 finishers as opposed to just 1. So The Rock not only has the People's Elbow, but also the Rock Bottom as a finisher, which is much appreciated because playing those PS1 games and watching opponents get KO'd by a fucking People's Elbow is the nadir of bad finishes in wrestling video games. Beyond that, it's the same old gameplay, and if you enjoyed that sort of thing in the PS1, then you should feel right at home here. Those hoping for something a little better, more complex, more game-changing as it were, will be somewhat let down, and quite frankly would have to wait a couple more games for that to happen, or just go on another platform entirely. I mean, it's not bad or anything, I enjoyed it here, but it's nothing you couldn't do on the PS1, save for entrances and more wrestlers in the ring, and possibly another finisher, which you probably could have done that, but... Oh wait, you could fight in a crowd too, the cardboard paper crowd in the game. Yeah, I guess you couldn't do that in PS1 either. So, and you got a ref. Don't forget the ref, and you've got reversals. I guess that's something. I suppose. Just Bring It has a roster comprising some 40-plus WWF superstars of the time, including a handful of unlockables that include all elite talent such as fucking Big Show, and Jerry Lynn in his only WWF video game. And also, Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst is in this too, so that's 2 WWF games he's been featured in, the other being Raw 1 on Xbox. On its own, the roster's fine, your mix of big names and notable undercards and such, But considering the game came out in the latter end of 2001, months after WWF had bought rival promotion World Championship Wrestling and gave the world a shitty invasion angle as a result, one couldn't help but feel disappointed that you didn't get a more varied roster from more recent additions, such as it was. But again, you had to wait for the next game, right? So the game also boasts 70 plus match types, or so the box says. A lot of these are basically recycled from the previous edition, and they're your standard fare. Singles, tags, 3-ways, 4-ways, 6-ways, 8-man battle royals, steel cages, Hell in a Cell, and you could do the 6-way Hell in a Cell match as well, so that's a novel thing, I guess. Too bad the cell is just the cage with the roof on top of it. Tables, ladders, street fights, falls count anywhere, ultimate submission, slobber knockers, Royal Rumbles, battle royals, and a couple others. They did add 3 stages of hell, which is a best of 3 falls match with each fall contested under different rules that you could pick out, so that's something. The additional wrestlers on screen does add more to Royal Rumble and battle royal modes. A little more chaotic, but finally this is a thing that happened. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that would merit a big bowl celebration or anything like that. Standard fare stuff. And then there's the story mode, where you pick a superstar and you partake in some stories, which usually involve you roaming around the arena in a first-person view, interacting with folks and responding to things in different ways, which affects your progress. You know, if you're offered a tag title shot, you could either take it or you could stick with your singles run, that sort of thing. It's not bad per se, it's fun for a lark, and accomplishing certain tasks will unlock content, whether it be additional characters, sets, or parts for the Create a Wrestler feature, which is a thing in this game, as it should be since it's a regular in most of these games nowadays, and it's a thing you could do, so I've seen better, but I've also seen worse, and I'll just leave it at that. There's also Create a Taunt, which I've never really used, and also Create a Stable, where you can create a group of wrestlers and give them a funny name or something, whatever floats your boat. Again, the SmackDown game looks slicker on the PS2 as far as the sets and the character models are concerned, and you do have a handful of sets to partake in, whether it be the Raw set, both SmackDown sets, the Ovaltron and the one with the fist. They got the WrestleMania set and a generic pay-per-view set and a bunch of backstage arenas that you could fight in, which, that's something to look forward to. Presentation as a whole is fine, not great, but it's adequate. I do like the little monitors in story mode mimicking your movements, that's kinda neat. Load times are surprisingly minimal, which is funny because load times start to get a little more bloated as the series progresses, but that's something, the load times are fairly quick here. And on the whole, they shined this game up real nice, turned that sumbitch sideways and stuck it straight up, well, never mind. Also, Stone Cold has Disturbed as his theme in this game, which I actually prefer over his regular tune, but that's just me. Overall, and despite the name of the game, WWF SmackDown Just Bring It doesn't really bring it. It does just enough things here and there to make it seem like a totally refreshed experience, but stops short of actually making it so, resulting in a game that, despite looking prettier, sounding a bit clearer, and having a couple extra bits here and there, is the same thing you played before, and thus doesn't feel like anything that merits the switch in generations. Don't get me wrong, the game is just fine, plays well enough, and if you like the earlier SmackDown games on the PS1, you'll feel right at home with this one, and can probably appreciate the couple extra bits that they did add, as well as the increased body count, the better presentation. It just happens to be a somewhat underwhelming debut onto a new platform, which is to be expected with a lot of these games actually. For nostalgic and completionist sakes, I suppose Just Bring It merits a sample play or two, but otherwise you're not really missing out much if you've never touched this one, so yeah.
Oh my gosh! Stone Cold Steve Austin was knocked out.
What?